Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is Sam Alexander with the news. In sports, the Denholm Lions out of Jody, Texas have won the high school football national championship, led to win by their new head coach, former NFL quarterback Jim Ledoux. The stadium erupted with a Jim roar as the Lions celebrated their hard-fought win. It seems a new high school championship dynasty may be underway. Congratulations to Denholm County High School, the Lions, and Jim Ledoux for laying down the Jim Law. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
I almost said hello, everyone. Wait, that's what I say. You guys, it's been too long. It's been too long.
I feel like we've always been reading this book.
And Benjamin Graham.
Hey, Constant Readers.
And we are back, continuing forever, reading 11/22/63, a Patreon selection from Jason Keene. This time we are reading through chapter 16, if you're reading along. Otherwise, spoilers ahead. And CM, you're leading our discussion, so take it away.
Thanks, Josh. In all reality, it's probably only been like 2 minutes that we've been reading this book. Sorry, I have to get one in every time, even if it's not good.
Yeah,
I like that you couldn't wait.
I can't.
Couldn't wait for an opportunity.
We really, speaking of an opportunity, we missed the opportunity to just record the first episode over and over again.
Oh, dang it. We should have done that.
Every time we enter the studio, it resets everything, and we have to start from the top of the book.
Okay, that would be my hell. Use all the record. Anyway, let's get moving. This is part 3, Living in the Past. We left Jake having returned to the rabbit hole in the middle of the night after nearly being bludgeoned by Frank Dunning. And I don't know if I can say that Jake was successful in his plan to save the family. Didn't really work out the way he wanted, but he did do some things. And after fighting against the obdurate past, which made him violently ill and put every sort of obstacle in his way, from speeding trucks to toys in a yard, he is face to face with Frank, who already killed one of his kids and injured Doris, when Bill Turkett appears and he spears Frank from behind with a bayonet, and before fleeing, Jake tells Doris that he'll do better next time. And he tells Harry, when Harry asks who he is, that he's his good angel. Bloody and sleep deprived, we're now with Jake back in 2011, and he's super duper pissed off that in the 2 minutes that he was gone, which has been 52 days for him, Al has lit a cigarette.
I like he's like, you were gonna pray
and make coffee.
Praying doesn't take that long. Real quick, it just occurred to me during that recap what that scene must have looked like to Harry, child Harry, when this man, who we now find out has a large portion of his scalp hanging down by his ear. Like,
yeah,
when he's like, "Who are you?" and he looks down bleeding from the head and goes, "I'm your good angel," and then stumbles away. What a terrifying night.
Yeah,
no kidding.
That's a good point. Al is tending to Jake's head wound, and Jake notices something different in the diner. Did this freak you guys out?
The pictures have changed. What really gets to me is the extent to what Al does and does not realize has changed.
Yeah.
And what they do and don't remember about the new past.
What are the rules, Ben?
Don't worry about it.
What does he notice and what does he know?
Because the picture that he had taken with Harry is gone. And now it's a picture with it's some local
second district
politician.
US rep, Mike something.
Yeah. And Al doesn't remember
that photo. No, but he remembers why Jake went back in time. Mm-hmm. He remembers Harry. He remembers the story he wrote.
He remembers the photo hanging there. I love it because it's what the yellow card man must experience on his side. Because now we see what happens if you have the proximity and you have the knowledge of something.
Yeah.
That now there are these conflicting things in his head.
Yeah, that's got to be wild.
It reminds me a lot of Jake Chambers' conflicting memories of realities that do or do not exist.
Except Al doesn't remember this new one.
Yeah.
Not yet. Maybe in a couple weeks he'll remember.
Yeah, maybe if Jake is on this side of the rabbit hole long enough.
You know what? I don't think Al is going to remember much in a couple weeks.
Okay.
You don't think so?
You guys, damn it.
Wait, what happens?
Okay, before we get to the sad, they decide to finally do some research on Al's computer, which has been like 3 feet away from them this entire time.
They could have done this 2 minutes ago.
Thank you, Ben. So they look up the school staff list. They see 3 people who aren't Harry. And Jake points out if Harry's mother didn't die, he would have no reason to move here. So he's got some more research to do when he gets home. I love that Jake, through all of this, it's like he's just struggling so hard with the 2-minute thing, which I would be too. And he keeps having these thoughts like, oh my gosh, how many emails did I rack up in 52 days? And I got to feed my cat. And it's just all these things. He keeps having to remind himself that only 2 minutes have passed.
I like that when he gets into his car, he's like reaches for all the Sunliners stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, God damn it. I should have driven it through the diner.
The little tirade he goes on about how new cars suck shit is pretty funny.
Oh, I have a quick question for you guys.
Yeah.
We probably won't be able to answer this, but it's just something I was thinking about when Al was saying, oh, it's probably because of my proximity to the rabbit hole that I remember why you went and what used to be on that wall. What if somebody's eating at the diner and some like Al or Jake goes through and changes something in the past, and then like the person in the diner remembers it the original way, but no one else does? What happens to that person's life?
I would love to read a version of this book where they do turn the rabbit hole over to some weird
The shop
like organization, and it's a whole book of the shop experimenting what can and cannot happen. Like,
kind of like Annihilation.
Yeah, like what happens if someone is in the radiation proximity of the rabbit hole, someone goes through, kills that person's parents before they're born, and then comes back.
I would not volunteer for being the part of that experiment.
It's the shop. I don't think volunteer is always their modus operandi.
Good point.
Yeah, I'd read that. So Al wants to know everything, but Jake needs to sleep, so he's taking him home. And we, as you guys said, we continue to get Jake struggling with being back in 2011. He's trying to drive the Sunliner.
Yeah.
It's just his normal shitty car. And we also get something that fascinated me, and I'm sure it did you guys too. The sign hanging from the chain around the rabbit hole. They start talking about that before he, drops him off and Al goes inside. Because there's a sewer pipe issue. And so Jake asks Al, hey, when you spent almost that whole time there, and you came back before you went in, was that sign still there? Was the chain still there? And Al says it was. And Jake's like, well, that's funny that they take that long to fix a sewer pipe. So that means someone put it there, which duh, but that means they put it there to protect the rabbit hole. So who put it there? And we don't get an answer to that, but it's something, it's just another one of those little bits that you're like, and go on.
Yeah, it's like, is there more to it, or is it just supposed to be, it's magic? It's just an odd thing the universe has put here to protect itself.
Jake also explains to Al the past's resistance to change is proportional to the amount of change that's happening, which I think is really spooky and cool.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite discussion, is because he's almost scared to tell Al, like, look, it fought back 10 times harder than it fought you because I affected so many more lives. Imagine how many lives Oswald will affect. Mm-hmm. Now imagine the pushback I'm going to get for that.
And I like that Jake is like, you know what? I'm going to do this as many times as it takes to get it right. And Al says, okay, hold on. You're in your late 30s. You're got to wait 5 years. A lot can happen to someone if you have to do it again in 10 years' time at your age, especially if the past is fighting you. And, you know, Jake, like part of his skull has been flapping on his head. So I think Al has a really good point. Like Jake, if he's going to do this, he has one shot.
Now. Yeah. Just real quick, something you said, CM, kind of sent my brain. I have to gather my thoughts. It really fucked me up.
That's how I do.
That idea that the past fights back in proportion to how much you change. He talks later on in this section about, what if that something tragic happens? And he thinks, if I hadn't come back,
would that have
happened? I don't think that bears out because of this rule that the past fights back. I think the past would have actively kept him from doing anything to change the past. It's like
he's made the past almost a bad guy who would do something evil to mess with him.
Yeah. So like, it's almost like this idea of like, he's back in the past and what if every little thing he does is setting off a butterfly effect? Due to the rules that this book is set up, we don't have to worry about that because if anything he does was automatically going to change something dramatic in the future, then he would have like tripped before he could have done it.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. I had not considered it from that perspective.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
Oh my God.
Okay, what?
It's like a built-in paradox saver.
I'm really jumping way ahead for this. But we meet a character later on, Sadie, who is accident prone. What if she's only accident prone because he's there?
I bet that's right.
Oh my God.
What if every time
insane.
Sadie trips on something or does something, it's because if she didn't do that, Jake was about to accidentally make Al Gore president or whatever.
Well, he gets so involved in the lives of that town.
Yeah, he does.
So he's heavily involved in so many people's lives. Connecting him to the lives of others. That's insanely reasonable.
I'm trying to remember if it said she's always been accident prone, and I don't care because I love that. We're just gonna we're gonna blame Jake. I have a question for you guys, just to continue to completely halt us because it's so fun to talk about all these speculations. I'm sure I'm overthinking this, but when they get to Al's house, they're sitting in the car talking, and his visiting nurse busts out of the place and starts to scold them, which I love. And her name is Doris. And this, of course, gives Jake a start because this is more evidence that the past isn't just obdurate, but it harmonizes. He will say that a lot. Would that harmony exist in this moment if Jake wasn't messing with the Dunnings' past? Because did Al, maybe I missed it, did he have a nurse 2 minutes ago? And if so, was her name Doris, or is the past harmonizing?
The way it's presented, I kind of assumed that, but now that I'm talking about, because I assumed that this nurse is a new person.
Because I wonder, because he has proximity to the rabbit hole, so he remembers Harry, but maybe things that are outside of that proximity that are different to him is just normal, but it's different. Because Jake never met the nurse in the first place, so he wouldn't. It just seemed weird.
But also, when getting to this part, when they introduce Doris, he acts with such surprise that for a split second, I was like, wait, his nurse is Doris Dunning? And then I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. It's just a different person named Doris.
I think you might be overthinking it. I think it's just because she's new. Like, he's only been back a day to get situated with his new medication and
that's true.
All that stuff. So she's like
a
brand new hire. It's like her second day on the job.
Yeah, before he had to get help in 2011.
Yeah.
2 minutes before that, he was totally fine.
Hold on
now. Oh, yeah.
Okay, this whole episode is just going to be us being like, I don't think this book makes sense.
I love it.
If Jake, okay, hold on. Is she a new hire? No, that doesn't make... oh, my God, my brain. If Jake went through the rabbit hole, that reset Al's going through the rabbit hole.
Right.
Would that mean that Al didn't go through the rabbit hole? And no, that doesn't make any sense. Never mind. Never mind.
I see where you're going, but no.
Grasping at straws here, folks.
This is what happens to your brain. Imagine how Jake feels.
Time travel.
Wild.
Full stop.
Time travel. Okay, so back on track. Jake makes his way home, passes out, and when he wakes up, he finally does some real research. Would one of you like to talk us through what he finds in the Libsyn and Derry papers?
The Libsyn paper is kind of adorable.
Yeah.
Because it's there's a story on the front page about the sunliner being found, being covered in blood. Nobody knows where the gentleman they met. Everybody in town is like, he was such a nice guy. I sure hope he's doing all right. And 3 days later, he's completely off the radar. Because there's no connecting him to Derry in those incidents. Derry news is that Frank has been killed, and it's on the bottom left of the front page.
And it costs 3 times as much for him to sign up to get that article as the Libsyn.
Of course, yeah. Because Derry's got to fuck you somehow. And yeah, and it's just this small, minor story about Bill saying he heard screams when he was walking by, and he came in and fought him and killed him with a hunting knife. And then luckily he was saved before he had a heart attack.
And Jake is confused because a hunting knife and a bayonet through the back of your body don't match up.
Yeah.
And it's just, he chalks it up to Derry being Derry.
I love that. Why is it all so Derry? It's like the thought.
Next, Jake starts to look up the Dunning kids using directory assistance. And he doesn't do this with very much forethought because he's surprised and real caught off guard when he finds himself talking to Ellen Dunning. This conversation, the first time I read this, it broke my heart. Like, King just punched me right in the gut super hard. It was so great. Which one of you would like to do the honors?
Yeah, this conversation is great. He calls and he's trying to come up with a reason that he would be calling. And he goes through a few different, he thinks to tell her, she asks if he's an old army buddy, and he knows that he can't lie that convincingly. And says that they're just old friends from school, right?
Yeah, he's like, oh, we used to pal around together. And he gives her, this is what hurt too, details. He's like, oh, you know, do you still sing? You'd always be singing. It used to drive us nuts. Ha, ha, ha.
And we
used to play at the rec with all these guys.
He mentions Tugga, I think.
It's nerve-wracking.
He gives his best.
Yeah.
She immediately calls bullshit on him. She's like, hey, listen, I'm a radio personality, which I love.
Yeah, I do too.
And I've talked to a lot of folks over the phone, and there is no way you are my brother's age. Who the fuck are you?
And she knows who he is. She guesses, which blew my mind. What did you guys think about this?
Yeah, then she says, are you him? Are you the guy that was there that night? Which is a huge logical leap.
Yes. Because she points out, he sounds like he's in his 30s. And he wasn't born yet when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this next part, another punch in the gut, Josh.
It's, God, I hate it a little bit. Just a tiny bit, because it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
But she basically says Harry is dead. He went to Vietnam. So this ended up cutting his lifespan by 40-ish years, Jake realized. But she says, where were you when he was out there dying? Where were you this time? Like, man,
before
Superman can't save everybody every day.
Before he left for Vietnam, he told her, don't worry about me. Ugh. I have a good angel.
That's the part that it fucks Jake up too, because the next scene, he hangs up on her, like not mean, but it's just sad. The next scene, he is sitting in the bathtub, clutching his knees, screaming. So just a side note, as I read that, I thought it was really appropriate. But when I was typing my notes, I was like, wow, what an overly dramatic teen girl who just got dumped thing to do. Just sit in the bathtub.
Yeah, if his ex-wife saw him right then, I think she would have...
She would have married him all over again.
Hey, can I completely derail us with a wild theory that adds nothing to anything?
Go for it.
As
That's how
is
this
our brand.
episode has been.
Yeah. All right. So I was thinking, what are the odds that within the same generation of Derry would produce not one, but two nationally known DJs? And then I thought, wait a minute. Richie knew something was going to happen to their family because of that incident with Jake. He knew that family was under a specific focus. So what if, after all the events, knowing that Tugga didn't make it, Richie became friends with Ellen, and they
got her into the disc jockey
got her
biz.
into radio because she was just as funny as he was, and that's canon.
Okay, I like it. It makes me feel a little bit better because this next part is another punch in the gut. The last thing Jake thinks as we close this section is that not only does he wish Al had never told him about the rabbit hole, he wishes Al was dead.
Oof.
This is such, like, it is, I'm glad it doesn't make you wait.
Yeah.
The second it's out of his mouth, you're like, oh, God damn it, Jake.
Yeah, because basically it's like, and oops, I
Yeah,
shouldn't
the
have
next
thought
morning,
that.
he's walking up to Al's house.
Well, it's later that night because he's supposed to go back
Oh,
that
that's
night.
right.
Yeah, 'cause
It's
he almost
not even the
oversleeps.
next day.
Yeah, it's hours have passed, man.
And he goes in, he immediately knows something is wrong. And he goes in to find that Al had taken the remaining pills, his pain pills, and left a note saying, you know what you have to do, and it has to be now.
Quick question for you guys. Again, I'm sorry, I have so many of these. Before he finds Al, he's entering the house and he sees all the pictures on Al's wall, like family photos, and a picture of the Kennedys. And so that would be like me sneaking a framed photo of Stephen King and Tabitha into my like personal family pictures hanging on my wall. So it's just weird, Al. But that begs the question, was that picture of Kennedy there before he decided to save him, or has he always been obsessed with the Kennedys?
I think people used to have photos of the president up in their house. Like, that was a normal
In 2011, it was not.
No, like, people, like, in the past. Like, so it could have been, if that's something his household did, it could be
That'd
something
be normal for him.
Well, you know, they call him Weird Al for a reason.
Oh, and now he's okay.
Yeah.
Another question for you guys. Do you think it's creepy or comforting to make your way to the corpse of a guy you know while a record plays music in the background, or would silence be better? So there's a record playing as Jake finds his body. And I was like, no.
Man, I guess
Music
it
or
depends on the
silence?
music. I guess it depends on the music. Like, if it's...
You don't get a choice. You just have to like pick one. It could be spooky.
If I have to
could
roll
be
the
great.
dice, I'm going to go silence.
Okay, Ben?
If King was really trying to give it that extra little bit of King edge, it should have been skipping. That's some real horror movie shit.
Yeah. Can I read the note?
Yeah.
The note's just sad. It says, sorry, buddy, couldn't wait. Too much pain. You have the key to the diner and you know what to do. Don't kid yourself that you can try again either, because too much can happen. Do it right the first time. Maybe you're mad at me for getting you into this. I would be in your shoes, but don't back down. Please don't do that. $10 under the bed, another $500 inside I saved back. It's on you, buddy. About 2 hours after Doris finds me in the morning. The landlord will probably padlock the diner, so it has to be tonight. Save him, okay? Save Kennedy, and everything changes. Please. What do you guys think of Jake's motivation to save Kennedy? Because really, he doesn't give a shit about that right now. He's like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do the Dunning family right. And maybe if I save Kennedy, there's no war and Harry doesn't enlist and die. Like, it's still all about Harry.
That's actually really cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Making it Because, saving Kennedy is this huge thing, but it's so impersonal. And making it have this, like, very personal reason behind it.
You'd have to have that. Otherwise, why would you go through all of that?
Yeah.
Jake makes his way back home and gets ready for his final trip through the rabbit hole, maybe, hopefully. He feeds his cat and tells him if he doesn't come back to go to the neighbors. But only 2 minutes will have passed. Does time stay at 2 minutes if someone is in the rabbit hole? If Jake stayed there or died, would we never get beyond 2 minutes in 2011?
Nope.
What?
No,
it
I don't
dooms the
think
universe to being eternally frozen in place if he doesn't return.
No, because things keep happening. Like, time keeps going on this side. I think he would just not come back.
He would have to die. If he died, time would continue. But time can't continue without him because at any point he could be back in 2 minutes.
But it does. The 2 minutes continues. We have no reason to believe that time stops at the 2 minutes. I just think if he doesn't come back, it would be the same as though he died. Like, people on this side he would just go in, never come back, and we would be like,
hold on.
Oh,
Ben.
I love opening
Hold
cans of
on,
worms.
Ben. That means that, theoretically speaking, Al stood there for 2 minutes. Jake didn't come back. Al stood there for 2 more minutes. Jake still didn't come back. Al lived with sometime within 52 days after this moment, and then an instant was reset to 2 minutes because that's where Jake came back.
What?
Because time never. Because time never.
That's not
if
what
time
I'm
never
saying.
stops,
I'm just
Ben,
saying. If
we're
he never
rewriting
came,
existences of the past and the future now. We've done it.
If
we solved
someone
it.
comes back, it's always 2 minutes later. If the 2 minutes pass, you just know, oh, they're never coming back. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so his cat will be frozen in a
No,
perpetual
it
purgatory.
would just be if after 2 minutes Jake doesn't come back, the world just goes on
until he comes back.
Except he didn't come back, because if he would have come back, he would have come back 2 minutes after he went in. And if he didn't come back after 2 minutes, then he never will.
That's fair.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to get us past this. I had to, and that was beautiful. Thank you.
Time travel's so insane to talk about, and I love it.
So Jake goes back to the diner through the rabbit hole where he runs into not the yellow card man, not the orange card man, but
Dead
card man.
black card man. Yeah, this guy is dead. It appears that he has slit his throat with the glass from a bottle of whatever he was drinking. And that's a bad way to enter the past, like with this huge thing ahead of you that you're doing.
I absolutely love the pressure to move on that finding the body of the yellow card man provides for the story. But if I'm just thinking out loud, what if he popped back real quick?
And then came back in.
Like, at that point, what's the window for my mulligan? If I get one more mulligan to do...
Yeah, because if the black card man is dead and he goes back and then comes back in, is he just not there at all?
Who knows?
We can't ask these questions. We have to stop. So, Josh, as you said, Jake decides today is not a good day to be a stranger around town because there's a corpse that's going to be found. So he hunkers down in the Tamarack Hotel for the night before repurchasing everything he already bought the very next day.
I love at some point someone compliments him on the shirt he's wearing.
Oh yeah, the guy he's buying it from is like, you must like this color shirt.
Yeah, and he's like, I sure do. And then he stops and thinks, he's like, yeah, it's literally the same
exact
shirt.
same one.
Shirt paradox.
So he gets the sunliner again, doesn't dicker. It's just like, here you go, 310, and makes his way to Derry. Okay, you guys, I love how efficient Jake is this time through Derry because there's so much more to cover in this section that we're going to talk about today. And we've already seen this play out once before, but I thought we could spend like 2 minutes to summarize how he handles himself up to doing the deed, talk about that and then move on. So if there's a bit either of you want to point out or spend a little more time on, that's fine. But I think we can keep this pretty brief.
Well, I just think it's interesting his reasoning for what he does, because he purposefully avoids any place he thinks Frank Dunning could be. Because there's a really cool analogy that what he is trying to do is like trying to knock down a tower of cards, which is really easy. But he is trying to knock down a tower of cards at a specific moment.
Yep.
And until that moment, he has to make sure it stays standing. That's so
stressful.
Cool. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and so stressful. And also, so he decides, I have to avoid Harry Dunning.
Frank.
I have to avoid Frank Dunning at all costs. But how much does that stand to reason? Because he knows, long story short, we mentioned it last episode, actually, you did, CM, that his plan is he's going to shoot Harry Dunning at his parent. God damn it. He's going to shoot Harry Dunning for no reason. He's going to gun the kid down and be like, can't die in Vietnam now, bitch. No, he's going to shoot Frank Dunning at his parents' mausoleum, or at his parents' grave. Mm-hmm. But he only knows that Frank is at that grave in this one instance of the universe in which he was in certain places. Like we've said, we don't know how much the butterfly effect here. What if he only went to his parents' grave on that day at that time because of
See, I think again, Jake is sort of making the past out to be a boogeyman. Like it's because it's obdurate. If I do anything, it'll change his course so that he's not there that moment I need him to be, so I can do what I need to do, which is such a wild thing to be grappling with in your mind. Like, how do I not mess up? Like, he thinks the past is that wacky, which is terrifying.
It's really cool. But anyway, his plan works.
Yeah.
He buys a pillow.
Derry pillow. It's rough. He doesn't get sick, although he preps for that. He gets
I did love that.
He gets a vicious migraine and has a really hard time just getting to his car. His jacket pocket where he had his keys, there's a hole in it suddenly, so he can't find his keys at first. The battery is dead. He has to deal with that. Then he can't get out of his car. The door is locked and jammed. I had in my notes, the sunliner pulls a Christine. It locks him in. And while he was here, before this moment, he's been making bets. He went to Chaz and met Chaz's wife, who's quite a character. And he's got to spend some more time in Derry after he does this deed so that he can collect his money. I thought it was interesting that as Jake gets to a certain point in his plan, he feels like he's broken through the obdurate past. Once he gets into the cemetery and he's waiting there, his headache fades. So after he kills Frank, he goes to the Dunning's house just to look at them and reassure himself that they're okay. And he thinks about how he wants to tell Ellen to still go trick-or-treating, to tell Harry not to go into the army. And
he wants to incriminate himself in this murder so bad.
He leaves Bill a note about his heart. He leaves it with the bartender at the Sleepy Silver Dollar. And most importantly, as he is leaving town, he passes Mr. Keene's drugstore. Mr. Keene is standing, looking out the big picture window, and Jake sticks his arm out of the sunliner's window and flips him off as he drives away. And I love Jake.
It's glorious. It's amazing.
A few days later, we find Jake on the west coast of Florida, and I want to mention his brief stop at the Humble oil station because this is the beginning of several points where I think King is writing about the 50s less through that rose-colored glasses thing, Ben, and I was just wondering if you felt a little more at ease with the depiction of this era.
He's definitely trying. It's something, it seems.
I mean, Jake literally says, if I've given you the impression, it's all sunshine.
He stops at a rest stop and comes into contact with a segregated rest stop. The whites only restroom has a sign pointing away through a path with a bunch of poison ivy leading to a board over a creek. And it's terrible, and it's obviously the worst. And I am glad that he does acknowledge that, hey, the past was not all really good root beer floats.
Yeah.
But it also, I don't know, there's so much hand waving. Once he gets to Jody, I just feel like there's an awful lot of
idealized.
This place is great. This is the Leave It to Beaver past,
Well,
and all these people are A-okay.
See, I feel like to me, that was something almost trying to keep him there and comfortable. I don't know. We'll get to Jody.
And of course,
thoughts.
there were good places, but I don't know. It's a hand wave at something heavier than King is ready or capable of really riding towards. So,
Before he gets to Jody, he spends some time in Sunset Point, a town 60 miles south of Tampa. And here's where we find out something that I don't think has been made super clear yet, unless I missed it. We have been reading Jake's manuscript.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a surprise here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. He's also writing a novel called The Murder Place, the place being Derry. He makes a remark here that really filled me with tension. As he's spending time in Sunset Point working on his manuscript and book, he pores over Al's notes and research, and he thinks this sort of obsessiveness in the notes, like this is exhaustive, but as he gets closer to the point where his life is going to converge with Oswald, he's going to feel less and less that way because there are holes in the research and notes. And I'm just like, ooh, I don't want to get there, you guys. Jake then thinks that Al taking his own life took away the scholar's greatest weakness, calling hesitation research, because having more time would have only muddied the waters because Jake would have gone through all the conspiracy theories and all the books. And there's just so much information out there about the assassination. Mm-hmm. What Al provided was his own observations of things, which is truly probably the most objective and helpful that Jake is going to have. A few important things happen here that if you guys want to spend more time on, we can, but Jake starts placing more bets to get some more income. And
so stupid.
It's so fucking stupid.
Because he meets a bookmaker named Eduardo Gutierrez, and all we get of him is that he seems very dangerous. And Jake, he also gets the most ridiculous college degree from United College of Oklahoma, where the questions are like a crossword puzzle that's like 3 down, not cat, but...
He basically gets a teaching degree from one of those mail-in flyers where you have to draw a turtle and a pirate. So shady.
Jake starts to get a hunch, a bad feeling, and in July of 1960, decides to put some distance between him and Gutierrez. And during his travels, he makes a pit stop in New Orleans. Let's talk about what he's doing here. He doesn't spend much time here, but this is an interesting place.
Once he's in New Orleans, I like that he's going to see, because I think the purpose is just to see where Oswald will eventually live. It's like a little sightseeing detour. Mm-hmm. And he gets this extreme sense of guilt when he realizes that he still has a book from the library in Florida. And he calls and they're like, oh my God, we were so worried about you. And he's like, what now? Well, apparently somebody burned his apartment down. Just so happened.
Yeah, like the day he took off, I think. Mm-hmm. So his hunch was right.
Yeah. And then he decides to mail it back and he's like, I'm just going to go ahead and leave now. Since I'm sending something to this with my name on it, I'm just going to go.
Well, and before he leaves, he witnesses an almost murder.
Yeah, this scene I thought was really this is where it started being more effective for me of showing the violence of the past and the seediness of the past, because he's in New Orleans and he's just walking by some club or
he's probably
bar.
On Bourbon Street.
and guy gets thrown out on the sidewalk and this hooker walks up, is basically trying to check on him.
Yeah, being really nice.
Yeah, it was like, hey, are you okay? And he stabs her in the middle of the street. Mm-hmm. And this is like in the middle of the day. It's such a sudden, pointless act of violence that he's like, yeah, I need to get out of town. I don't like it here. And the next place he goes isn't much better.
Ooh, no, because he rents a room at the Adolphus Hotel on Commerce Street in Texas and stalks the Texas School Book Depository, where Oswald will eventually take his shot, which I thought this was so cool because it reminds him of the Kitchener Ironworks in Derry. Like he can feel it calling to him, telling him to come inside. And he thinks that he's like, I have no intention of setting foot in that place ever because he's going to try to take care of Oswald the way he did with Frank this time around, according to Al's notes, which is titled Conclusions on How to Proceed. What did you guys think about his plan of how he's going to tackle Oswald?
First, real quick, I just got to say that this section was the point where I'm like, I got to tell CM she was right.
Oh, yeah.
I have to take back what I said last episode about, it's so lame that he's like trying to show that the past was bad, but only in Derry, a place we know is supernaturally evil. But this really, the paralleling gets real on the nose when he starts dreaming and saying Derry is Dallas, Dallas is Derry in his sleep. But it works. It's really cool, especially when he's like, oh, that reminds me of the Kitchener Ironworks. I was like, oh, yeah.
And it gives this place in Dallas just this creepy feel that I love, something that I've only associated with Derry, that if you had asked me before reading this if it was possible for me to like feel the way I feel about Derry about another place, like, well, no, it's so specific to Derry. And King just did it with a sentence. Like, you fucker.
he like personifies the school depository and gives it this like speech in the voice of
Pennywise,
Derry,
kind
basically,
of, like, which
where
is
it's saying,
Derry.
come in. There can't be ghosts here. The crime hasn't happened yet. It's really cool.
It's so self-aware of why he's there. It's very upsetting.
It's at this point, though, that he has the great relief with the simple solution of, I don't have to live here. I can move.
Which that made me laugh like really hard.
What it made me realize is I thought of another really simple solution to this whole JFK thing.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the book depository, start a fire on that floor, come back to the present, see if that changed anything.
But then he just kill him from the grassy knoll or whatever. Like that's the concern.
That shot, but does that 1 in a million shot happen from any different angle? Is he that lucky?
It's the same reason that when he was last episode going through his list of how to deal with Frank, it's why he couldn't like do something to send him to jail or incapacitate him because
Kennedy's going to be around in other places. He could take a shot somewhere else at a different location.
That's fair.
I know that was a good. Trust me, my brain has like gone through ideas and then had to throw them away because that's the fun of reading this book, I think, too.
We're accidentally going to become associated with JFK conspiracy podcasts because we keep throwing out
we'll
ideas.
Be the worst one. So, as you said, Jake hates Dallas. His plan was initially to stay there while Oswald was in Fort Worth, which wasn't too far away, and then move to Fort Worth when Oswald moves to Dallas to be near but keep enough distance that he doesn't cause any butterflies to flap their wings. He attempts to do this, but can't take it. And soon he is looking for a place outside of Dallas so that he doesn't lose his mind. If Jake's time in Derry trying to save the Dunnings is like my favorite part of the book, what we're getting to now with Jody, I think might be my second. Because I like it because it's a juxtaposition of just this miserable experience he had that he had to go through twice. And it's like the carrot being dangled in front of his face now. Like, hey man, why don't you just chill out? Because life can be really good here. And we'll get to it. But there is a point where he decides not to go back.
Yeah.
Home.
See, yeah. The part 3 of this book is, I think the part 3 title is called Living in the Past. Mm-hmm. And I love that it's one of those titles that you're just like, yeah, of course, we're going to be living in the past from now on. But then you realize that like, he builds a life for himself in this
Ooh,
past.
yeah.
And like how heavy that makes it.
Yes. So he's driving south of Dallas on Highway 77 into Denholm County. He spots a billboard with a message on it that's going to come back a few times, although we're not going to understand the significance yet. And it is a picture of who we will come to know as Jim Ledoux, the star football player of the local high school. We've got Jim power. I'm just going to say that here and leave it. Jake pulls off into an Al's Diner run by an actual Al.
I love it.
Al Stevens. And he's a friendly dude who gives Jake some really solid advice. He suggests that Jake may get a job by talking to a man named Deke Simmons, principal of the high school. And he gives him a tip. He's like, he comes in with his gal pal, Mimi Cochran, the librarian, and she's the real MVP of Denholm Consolidated. So you impress Mimi and you're in. You've impressed Deke. Which one of you would like to introduce us to Deke and Mimi and their fantastic way of interviewing Jake?
Well, their way of interviewing
I
Deke.
just love
Mimi.
Yeah. Deke just eats and is oblivious.
Mimi is a super cool character.
Mm-hmm.
She is this older lady, but she is so obviously in charge. She's so obviously like the brains of the outfit. And she starts, and Jake is immediately like, this is never gonna work. I really want to live here. I would really like it here, I think, but I don't know, because she starts asking him questions that...
like, have you read Catcher in the Rye?
Yes, because we skipped over. He taught for a little while in
Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And
He was a substitute.
got yelled at because he talked about Catcher in the Rye, and they asked him if he was a subversive.
Because the kids were like more engaged than he's ever. It was one of those really cool moments.
You're the most, Mr.
You're the coolest teacher ever, Mr.
And so she asked him about, what do you think about, have you read Catcher in the Rye? And he goes, here it comes. Yes, of course I have. What did you think of it? And he said, well, I think it's a great book about, how good the 60s can be if the kids, what does he say? If the kids keep their courage or something like that.
Basically keep their wits about them and push back. Don't settle.
And she ends with, do you think that Catcher in the Rye should be in our school's libraries?
I love he resigns himself too. He's like, I got to be honest because this woman is sharp and if I lie, she'll know it.
Yeah, so she says, you know what? I think it should. And I think one day, it will be. And she surprises him by saying, well, shit, you shouldn't be a substitute. You should be on our full-time staff.
Yeah, because somebody's going to be retiring. And that person's a moron. And I like how Deke is like, Mimi, that's so improper. And she's like, it's not improper, it's true. She's great.
Yeah.
So Jake basically gets the job. And after this meeting, we get a bit of foreshadowing here, which is not going to pay off in the section we're covering. But Jake says the following week, he makes a mistake. He goes to Dallas and he places a large bet because he thinks he's far enough away. Nobody will write. It's going to be fine, you guys.
Fucking stupid.
Oh, we'll get there someday.
He just jumps through every mental hoop
to justify
to talk
it.
Himself into it. Yeah.
He only has, like $14,000 to live off of. He'll only get like $50 a day or a week sub pay or something crazy. It's rough. Before we make a jump forward in time to Jake's experiences in Jody, he spies on Oswald's brother and mom, and this experience is just enough that it gives him a sympathy for Oswald that he did not feel for Frank. What did you guys think of this scene? Do you want to talk about it?
It's basically Oswald's mom shouting at Oswald's brother, saying, "I want to hear from Lee."
I want to talk to my good kid.
Doing
the
it
good son
in public.
Yeah.
Yeah, like shouting it down the block.
Yeah.
It's the king overbearing mother trope.
Which he does so well.
yes, he does. It is unpleasant every time. This book does do the job. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but I would be interested in reading more into I almost said John Wilkes Booth. The other one from Assassins. No, that's one for our Sondheim heads. Oh. It doesn't matter. Oh my God, listeners, this goes to show that my inability to remember names does not just...
I thought that was just for us,
Did
Ben.
you
yeah, it's not just a bit. I just
Did you forget
forgot
Lee Harvey Oswald?
fucking Lee Harvey Oswald's name.
Oh, you were so baffled looking that I was going to say Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm like, he must be talking about something else, though, based on the look on
I
his face.
completely forgot. No, I'd be interested in reading into more about his life because, like, how much is this mother a real character? Like, how much was his family life actually like?
Yeah,
this?
historical
It sounds
fiction is
terrible.
cool, and I don't know, how much of this dips into that or not, because I haven't really investigated it beyond this. But I did, after the first time I read this, I did kind of feel like I know way more about JFK stuff than I ever have.
Yep.
In a kind of a cool way. So it's now May of 1961. Jake is at home in Jody, and there's a knock at his door, and we are about to meet the super-de-duper-de sweetie pie, Mike Kozlaw. Oh, Mike. I love you guys, right? I freaking love Mike.
Yeah.
He's adorable.
Mike is one of the local football team's players. He's a big kid, and he is coming. This is when he's coming to almost in tears.
In tears, yeah.
Yeah, in tears because the other kids on the football team are giving him a hard time, and because he has joined the play.
Yeah, he's in the
school
drama club
play.
now.
And
we
he's
learn,
he's Lenny. He's one of the leads.
Yeah. And they did it they auditioned as a joke. They were kind of hazing Jake as the new teacher doing this play.
yeah, but the second he came on stage, he was aware that Mike was unnatural, and he gives this amazing like pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
It shows how good of a teacher Jake is.
Yeah.
Because
In a very short amount of time, because we just jumped to this moment apropos of nothing, basically.
yeah, and he says, you can't let them get to you. You have something special. Mm-hmm. And convinces him to go on with the play.
Now, this book is already so long that usually we can get frustrated with scenes that feel non-important. And I appreciate that the non-importance of how much time we spend on this in the book actually is how important it is to show Jake being invested in the lives around him and not just the mission.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I feel that way about the Jody section, which is why it's like my second favorite part. It is so genuine and sincere, and because of what he's been through before that, and reading it for eighth time through or whatever, it's even more special to me because I know what he's going to go through, and it's this moment that you can be happy for Jake, but it's bittersweet because even though you know how it's going to play out, you are screaming at him to stay. Like Jake seems more comfortable and at home here than he does in his life in 2011.
Absolutely.
I went into this reading of this remembering having those thoughts about this section. I remember my first go through thinking, this goes on too long. It seems to become a different book at this point because it is just it becomes a romance novel. Mm-hmm. This is King writing a romance novel.
I love it. Yeah.
And this go through, I'm like, it's clicking.
So
it's
I wonder,
really
nice.
effective.
I wonder if that experience is best when you have read it once before.
Yeah.
Could be.
Listeners, you'll have to let us know if that's the same for you. So we're going to jump 3 weeks. Jake gets a visit from Mimi, who had pestered him into letting her read his manuscript, The Murder Place, which I don't know about that name.
It's a terrible name. And we find out that Jake might be a terrible writer.
Yeah, I was just going to, what did you guys think of her response
The
to
fact that
his...
he's like, it's set in Dallas, or it's set in Texas, but everyone speaks like they're from New England. Everyone says "aya," and he's like, "Oh, I didn't catch that." Are you an idiot, Jake? What are you doing?
I love, though, she softens it because she's like, this is good, but you know what you're really good at? Her main argument is that he's a good teacher and like publish this under a pseudonym because you'll never get a teaching job with your name on something like this. And she tells him artistic talent is far more common than the talent to nurture artistic talent. And Jake is just like, wow, I don't know what to say. And this is why I love Mimi. She says the best thing ever, something I hope I can remember to say to people. Say thank you and compliment me on my acute judgment, that's just the perfect response to someone who has a hard time accepting compliments, I think.
Real quick, do I misremember? Did Bev and Richie mention that there was a clown?
Jake mentions a clown to them. He's the one who brings up
and
the
they
clown.
act real weird about it. That's right. Because when she talks about his book, she's like, "Oh, I like the murderous clown," and I'm like, "Did he just pull that out of thin air?"
Well, no, because the adults were talking about
the bartender
a person dressing as a clown.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why you can't talk to kids.
Yeah, because of clowns. So there's a full-time spot open at the school, and Mimi is not going to ask Jake to take it. She's going to basically point out in her awesome way how dumb he would be if he didn't take it. She is a force, you guys. And with that business accomplished, Jake notices how tired and thin she is. She's already a thin lady, and he asks if she's okay, and she responds with, "Why wouldn't I be? I'm getting married." So Deke finally locked it down. Good for him. She is also going to retire. They've hired a replacement already. Her name is Sadie Clayton. We're going to call her Sadie Dunhill, her maiden name from now on. And we also find out that Mimi is going to be spending some time in Mexico for some experimental treatments because she's very, very sick. And through this conversation, she stops to study Jake and then says something interesting. She compares him to a space alien, specifically the one from the day the Earth stood still. And she point blank asks him if George Amberson is his real name, and he tells her the truth, that it's not. And I'm just like, this part is like, man, I'm glad he earned so much goodwill with the play, because we skipped it, but the play was like a hit, and like Deke and Mimi were crying. People were, it was amazing. The coach was
crying.
Yeah, the coach who also made fun of Mike was even crying, because she doesn't give a flying fuck that he's lied. She knows he's a good person.
Yeah, this is where we find out she knows his degree is fake.
Yeah.
Like, she is completely like, you're just some weird drifter, but I like you, so have a job. She picks up on something supernatural about him.
But he's so awesome.
Because we find out later he's constantly talking
my gosh, in slang from not even 2011.
I'm so fucking angry about that moment. I can't wait to be mad about it.
Okay, well,
yeah, he talks like how Stephen King thinks people talked in 2011, which was actually how people talked in like 1999.
Yeah, I love it. So we're gonna come forward a little bit. It is the day of Deke and Mimi's wedding reception, and we finally get to meet Sadie. And while it wasn't love at first sight for Jake, it is for me. Sadie is great. Which one of you would like to introduce her?
He goes out of his way to be like, it wasn't love at first sight.
It wasn't a meet cute.
It wasn't a meet cute.
But it wasn't.
But it totally was a meet cute.
Thank
shut
you.
up,
I had
Jake.
that in my note. I basically had almost exactly what you said, including the shut up, Jake.
Yeah.
He got to second base. It's definitely a
That's
meet
not
cute.
even part of it. It's just their meeting is instantly the chemistry is there. They're in love. Get married. Shut up.
Yeah.
I forget that she's 6 foot tall without heels. I forget that she's such a large lady. That like the two, because Jake's what, 6'2" or something?
6'4" or 5.
Yeah, he's like very tall. So they're just the two tallest people at every place they go to.
Anytime they go anywhere, he's like, people are staring at us because we're hot.
Yeah. Basically. It's really cute. Yeah, their meet cute is adorable. She is about to introduce herself and trips on a chair, and he saves her boob first, which is how all my meet cutes happen. I'm always getting a handful of tit. And they just hit it off as friends, though. And it kind of stays that way for a long time, except like he's always commenting to us on like how gorgeous she is and how cool she is. We jump to August with some really sad news. Coach Borman and Ellen Doherty, the acting principal, while Deke and Mimi, have gotten married and go on their honeymoon and are in Mexico, are at Jake's door. Mimi has passed away. And Jake poses the idea of having a celebration for her, a school assembly style thing. And Ellen suggests that he should have Sadie help him out. And that'll be a really good introduction to the students and community for her because she's taking over Mimi's spot. But to have her like replacing this irreplaceable person, but being part of this memorial is a really, really good idea, actually. And it makes me really like Ellen. We don't get a ton of her, but what we do get, she's a pretty cool lady. For the next few weeks, Jake and Sadie put together the memorial assembly. And this is the whole time, like, nothing's happening between us. He's falling in love, and you can tell. And it's just so well written. And he's so not interested in her romantically, though, that he invites her to the Friday night football game.
And the whole town's going to see us together, but it's not a big deal because everybody goes to the game anyway.
And here's where the sparks finally fly, except Jake is almost cock-blocked by a chant.
The dumbest chant. I don't like this part.
I don't quite get this part.
It's such a dumb phrase. It is not threatening
it's a very
at all.
Moment.
And it is like trying to set up this. It's kind of it becomes the name of the force of the past.
Which I think that part is cool. Because I think we mentioned very briefly, but it's so easy to kind of like pass this part.
Mm-hmm.
The yellow.
I completely forgot that it would be important.
Yeah, the yellow. It was either yellow card man or orange. Maybe it's the orange card man.
The orange card man.
Yeah, said something like "fuck you, Jim Law" to Jake, and I think we briefly talked about it. But that's what this chant is.
Well, which is especially
is,
because Jim Law, isn't that a thing? Am I just making that up? Like, I always thought that it was like a phrase for just cops, like calling a cop Jim Law. I might be making this up completely out of whole cloth.
Johnny Law?
Maybe that's
Johnny
it.
Law.
I don't know. But like, I thought it was like an old timey phrase that he's yelling. But when everyone starts chanting for Jim Ledoux, they keep going, Jim Law.
Why aren't they finishing his name?
Exactly. It's a terrible chant, but it scares
It's because
the
they
shit
started
out of
workshopping it because they were saying Jim La do, and he thought he was being booed, and it was really getting in his head.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, no
You're
problem.
right.
No problem.
Okay.
I did a lot of research.
I appreciate that. So, yeah, this freaks him out, and he just freezes up, and Sadie's like, are you okay? And he's not answering her for a very long time while this chant is happening. And then he breaks out of this sort of daze and kisses her on the nose. And some kids see it, and they're like, way to go, Mr. Amberson, get it in.
One kid is like, hell yeah, Mr. A. It's great.
And Jake is feeling very uneasy that the past is harmonizing. You guys, oh boy, we are... It's a long episode. We knew it was going to be. We are at part 4.
We knew it.
Sadie and the General. We're not going to finish this part on the episode, but plenty is going to happen through our endpoint. We get a few paragraphs that are really fun and nice about the memorial assembly. Jake and Sadie are growing a little closer, and so are Jake and Lee Times growing closer in Dallas. I mentioned that because you can see his life like falling together and how difficult it's going to be to change or move that around when he has to make the switch. Jake makes a trip there in early October to visit a man named Silent Mike. He has some business to conduct.
This bit is stupid, and it did make me laugh.
I like it, yeah.
Because he's this Dale Gribble character
who
runs an electronics store, and Jake comes in and asks for some things, and the guy's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Maybe on the planet you come from, they have wireless listening devices, but all we got is the radio, dum-dum.
I also like all the effort he puts into the lie the guy doesn't care about. He went to a pawn shop and bought a ring so that he could look like he's married because he's going to spy on his cheating bitch wife. And the guy's like, uh-huh.
He's like, shut up. He very obviously deals with people doing this kind of stuff all the time. But they make a deal, and he decides to make some devices for Jake that we later find out are wiretapped lamps.
Mm-hmm.
And we also find out he asks why his name is Silent Mike, and it's because he thought that Christmas song was about him.
And Jake doesn't get it until he's out in the parking lot.
It's such a dumb bit. It adds nothing, and it makes me love standout character of the book.
Yeah.
Silent Mike.
Big Steve Award.
Not Ivy Templeton.
Yeah.
Oh,
You didn't
we're
like
gonna
Ivy
get
Templeton?
to Ivy. Oh, Ivy.
She's my standout character for this section of the book.
Yeah, Jake makes his way after this to Fort Worth in a shack on Mercedes Street, one of the other places Lee, Marina, and their baby June are going to be staying eventually. And this is where Jake meets the charming Rosette and her ma, Ivy Templeton. No relation to Al, hopefully, for Al's sake. Okay, I love the reading of Rosette in the audiobook. It's so funny when the way he does her voice when she's calling Jake a dirty old sumbitch.
It's very funny.
Because Ivy yells at her, and her response is to call him a dirty old fucking sumbitch, and then runs off laughing maniacally. And it's like, girl, I see you. You guys want to talk about Ivy and his business with her?
That I love. So it's a slum. And essentially, Jake wants information. This is the apartment that Lee will move into eventually, and he wants to, or it's the neighbor of the one.
Yeah, it's across the street.
It is the one.
It's the one because he's going to rent the one across the street.
Because he's putting the lamp there.
Right.
He's renting the one across. Yeah. So he's like, hey, let me know when this becomes available, and I'll give you $10, and you don't have to fuck me.
Because she really is like, I'm gonna have to fuck you. Okay. every time they interact, she's like, fine, I'll have to fuck you. He's like, you don't have to. She's like, I know I do.
I know. I'm aware I have to. Her poor laid up husband who got hurt at work, and they're gonna.
Yeah, this lady is 1,000% Ruby. Don't take your love to towning that guy. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
What the fuck does that mean?
Someone knows what song I'm
Someone's gonna
talking
get that.
about.
That's such an
Doesn't
insane
matter.
sentence. Yeah, but she eventually agrees. She takes the money and is like, "Yeah, I'll call you when we move out."
And Jake does have just a little bit of interaction with the daughter, Rosette, because she's playing with a ball and tries to throw it at his head and is impressed when he catches it and throws it back. And I mentioned that because it's going to come back later.
They are still, though, very Derry people.
They are, yeah.
They drop casual racism, and she tells Jake to run over her dog on the way out because it'll help her out. Jeez. I don't know what the fuck that was about.
Ivy's rough. When Jake gets back home, he has a note on his door from Sadie, who needs a favor. Coach Borman's mother broke her arm, and now Sadie is left as the lone chaperone for the high school dance, something nobody wants. And she needs a partner, and of course, Jake is happy to do that.
Not just any dance. It's the Sadie Hawkins dance.
Sadie Hawkins?
Yeah. So he says that, are you asking me to your namesake dance?
It's very cute.
It's very cute.
I thought for the hop, we could each talk about our favorite part of this section. Because I'll just go first, if that's okay. Yeah. Mine is the foreshadowing of Vince's death. They're at the dance, and Jake's kind of, going around making sure the kids aren't fucking each other in the halls and drinking, because that's what kids do in the late 50s, early 60s, and still. And he runs into the boys, the group. It's Vince, who's also in the play, Jim Ledoux, Mike, and they're passing something back and forth. And Jake just don't, and he tosses it away. He's like, don't ruin your life for, a stupid drunk moment at a dance.
It's such a wholesome moment.
Yeah.
Because it is not like him being it's not like a power move of this teacher coming in.
It's him caring.
And it is not the kids. The kids are not like, what the hell? It is so obviously these kids that were just making a dumb mistake.
Yeah. And they care about his opinion.
They are found out by a teacher they respect.
Yeah.
It's such a great moment.
And it foreshadows what happens to Vince, because this is where he thinks about Vince's reckless driving. Because Vince is kind of this guy who's, silly and goofy all the time, and he has to put him in his place a little bit, but all the boys handle it well. Did you guys have there's another really cool part that happens.
The dance?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the dance.
This is the real part where you're like, okay, you can't pretend anymore, Jake.
Yeah.
Come on. Because as the night is going on, the kids start yelling for them to dance, and the music starts up. The music played by Richie Tozier.
Yes, I love it.
Another really nerdy kid who likes music.
Who stole his dad's records and is going to get in trouble.
And they start up the music, and the second it starts, he knows what's going to happen because it's the exact same song that Bev and Eddie were listening to, and it's the exact same song that him and his ex-wife learned to dance to, the Hell's a Poppin'. And they start doing a Lindy Hop, and it is perfect.
It's magic. When the dance is over, Jake takes Sadie home and parks in her driveway, and it's sexy time almost.
That's my favorite part, where they fog up the windshield.
Until she starts crying and runs away and says some shit that made me brace for a Rose Matter moment.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh.
Yep. Same.
Yeah. When she calls him afterwards.
Well, she tells him she's a virgin and then runs inside her house and shuts the door.
And then calls him shortly afterwards.
As soon as he walks in the door, his phone's ringing at home. Yeah.
And mentions something obliquely about a broom. And I went, oh, no.
Yeah. And we have to live with that broom comment for a while before we find out it's bad in a different way than I expected it to be bad. Still bad. I love too how she's like, do you want to come over to my house tomorrow for a picnic? And tells him very discreetly, basically it's a condom picnic.
I never want to go to a picnic with you, CM. I don't like that.
So
I've been to a condom picnic.
Sandwiches are chewy. I don't like it.
Okay, guys, we find ourselves once again at a very important crossroads. Just bear with me. It's a Stephen King sex scene. And I have to admit that for some reason, reading things like this now, having done the podcast for so long, for 5 years, it makes me kind of feel like I'm reading my dad's draft of his first novel, and I'm finding out in the moment I'm reading it that it's kind of erotic. He didn't, think to warn me. And I think he does a good job here. There's nothing wrong with it. And maybe it's a version like the combination of the audiobook version, because what's happening to me personally in this moment is that I'm listening to Craig Wilson fuck himself. And it's beautiful, but I feel like I shouldn't be here.
There is some real moaning going on.
Did you not enjoy, and I quote, the sound of greedy discovery?
Did I enjoy the sound of greedy discovery? That's what you just asked me.
That's what the book asked us.
Only real friends could ask each other those questions, you guys. Anyway,
there is definitely a scale to Stephen King's sex scenes. On one end is the It sewer scene, and this is on the other end.
Oh, so they boner talk, and to spare us the discomfort, I'll put the sting in here in post.
Well, they're teachers, so do I have to say it? Come on. Recess.
There it is.
Okay, let's jump to the information dump that Sadie shares with Jake here, and further on. Let's just combine this all.
It's gross.
It gives us a lot of insight into her situation.
Yeah, we learn that her ex-husband is a huge creep, basically. He is this they weren't rich. She tells Jake that they weren't rich, but they were still members of society. And he's like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but okay. And they were their family, her family and their family seemed very like hoity-toity, uptight, right? Mm-hmm. And when they got married, they were married for 4 years and never had sex because once a week he would say he needed to get it out. Ugh.
Yeah.
And any sexual contact was a no-go because he had OCD, which I don't know existed back then. Well, yeah, obviously it existed, but I don't know if they had that
name for it,
nomenclature.
yeah.
Because when she starts talking about him, Jake is like, adds a bunch of stuff. Oh, he probably alphabetized everything.
Yeah.
Everything had to be exactly so. He washed multiple times a day. And she goes, oh my God, how did you know that? Well, he has obsessive compulsive disorder, but also
something else going on there too.
A huge amount of sexual shame. And she let it happen. The broom ends up being that once he got it out, which I don't need to tell you is a handy, he would make her go wash her hands
Until
under
they were
scalding
red.
hot water.
Ugh.
And when she got back, there would be a broom between them on the bed.
On top of the covers so that they couldn't touch, like a barrier.
It's such a massively upsetting bit of like emotional neglect and abuse. It sucks.
And to take something so like mundane but practical in the house, like imagine how she feels every time she has to sweep her floor.
Ugh.
Yeah. Which sounds silly, but it's like a trigger now. So yeah, she explains that all to Jake and he makes love to her real good before that. So it's sweet that she has an orgasm.
Yeah, that is nice. We should also get into the fact that
good for her.
Okay, it's sweet because her mom told her it doesn't happen for women. Don't make me sound weird. That's a horrible thing to tell any woman.
It's rough.
I didn't want us to continue without mentioning that on top of these things, there also is additional physical. He did put his hands on Sadie.
Yeah, he
slapped her when she
yeah.
asked basically, how are we going to have kids if you don't get all up in here?
Well, and he's like, I would never put my thing in your diseased hole.
Yeah.
Like, was how he treated her.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What a creep.
Yeah. And so that's...
I'm glad we'll never meet him again in this book.
When it started to turn violent is when she ran away, and he left the book forever.
Yeah, thank goodness. So we jump forward. Jake gets his spy lamps from Silent Mike. And... this doesn't make sense because we didn't talk about it. I'm just going to say it. We're going to roll with it. And Jake and Sadie keep pounding cake.
Yeah, that makes as much sense as anything.
As they pound more cake, she reveals more of her past to him, but we wrapped that all up in one discussion. And, you guys, I love, they have some good wingmen to keep, to help them out.
This is great that the what's his name? Deke comes by and he thinks it's going to be, he doesn't know what it's about. But Deke's like, okay, so Ellen wanted me to tell you and Sadie about this thing. And he's like, oh no, everyone knows. Because of course everyone knows. But he tells him that there's a nice bed and breakfast area.
You all know you can fuck in a hotel outside of town and spend the night together, right? Duh.
Exactly.
Me and Mimi did it for years before we got married. It's cute.
Yeah, that's a good friend.
Yeah, and on one of those nights, Jake has a terrifying dream. Jake and Sadie are laying naked in an empty house, and Jake hears something moving around upstairs, making thudding and other unpleasant noises. And written in charcoal on the peeling plaster wall are the words, "I will kill the president soon." And then under that, "Not soon enough, he's full of disease." This is similar to what he saw spray painted in Derry. And Jake whispers in his dream to Sadie that he thinks it's Frank Dunning, and she shakes her head no and says it's John Clayton, her soon-to-be ex-husband. Then she says it's the yellow card man, and he brought the gym law. And then he's woken up by a very terrified Sadie because he's been saying all this shit in his sleep, including, Ben, what you mentioned earlier, Derry is Dallas, Dallas is Derry.
Yeah, I love that he immediately is like, oh, fuck, I was talking in my sleep. That could be really bad. There's a lot of stuff.
Not as bad as the stuff I'll say out loud, not realizing it.
yeah, constantly, apparently.
And
I can't wait to be mad about it.
Unfortunately, he wakes up from this nightmare to another one. There is a knock at the door. They're staying at this bed and breakfast, and it's one of the caretakers with a message from Ellen. There has been an accident. This is so rough because we've gotten to know these kids and Jody and his home here and how important all of this is. And we find out that Vince rolled his truck. He was killed. Mike was thrown from the truck, broke his arm. Bobby Jill was also there. She was badly scarred on her face. And what killed me is that when Jake goes to the funeral, he's giving his condolences to Vince's mom, who's telling him like how he changed his life and all this stuff. And he gives her a hug. And this is where I think, Ben, you were talking about this. He's hugging her and he has the thought, did my being here cause something that set this event into motion? Like, would Vince have died? Is this my fault? And his knee-jerk reaction to that thought, because that's horrifying, he like grips her tighter, like almost, for comfort. And it's such a human moment.
My thought is this is the obdurate past correcting itself, because that car crash was supposed to happen.
He stopped them from drinking at the Sadie Hawkins dance.
Yep.
And also, I think
I fucking love that so much, Ben.
I think it's an amazing show of restraint on Stephen King's part to not kill Mike.
Yeah,
Yes,
I thought that was
agreed.
going to be
This
it.
is sad. It's a tragedy. But when this happened, I had to go, who the fuck's Vince?
I did too. So,
I was like, how sad should I be right now? Okay, regular amount.
and this is kind of around the part where Jake is thinking like, I'm going to stay in Jody. This place is too important to me, but he's still going to follow through with his plan. So he doesn't know how this is all going to work and come together. And it's not, but he thinks it is. The next sections are Jake reminiscing on how good his life is here and how he has a life here, which he doesn't really have much of in 2011. And we're going to jump forward a few weeks before Christmas. Jake gets a call from Ivy Templeton. And I feel like this section is where we really get to unpack Ivy and all her I'll roll ya a fuck glory. What did you guys think of this part when they talk and he goes to visit her?
Yeah, so he gets the call from Ivy saying like, hey, this is the call I promised you. I don't know why I'm actually even doing this because I already have your money, but fuck it, I'm doing it. And he's like, hey, want to meet real quick? And so they meet up and he pays her some more money for a duplicate key of her house key. And he gives her his coat, which is very nice.
Yeah, because she's talking about how her life is taking a turn. Her husband was in a car accident and is now paraplegic. And he feels sympathy for her and decides...
Because she's trying to fuck everybody to get... I don't know what.
and he decides that he can help her while also furthering his plan to eventually spy on the Oswalds.
The thing I liked about this section was she tells him, because he's like, say hi to Rosette. She's like, I won't be doing that because after you visited the first time, she woke me up in the dead of the night, screaming her head off from this terrible nightmare where she was talking about there being a monster in the back of your car. And he's like, does this monster have a name? And he has a sinking feeling in his gut. And she says, yeah, Jim Law. I think she was trying to say genie or something. And the other thing I like is he keeps describing her. Ivy's rough and tumble, and she has this harsh rainbird caw that he finds strangely charming. And I kind of did too. Just a strangely charming woman who is not unproblematic.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that. When Jake gets home, he finds out that Sadie's been trying to reach him to see if he wants to go to Coach Borman's Christmas Eve bash. An invitation that Jake hasn't looked at yet because the time is winding up to move forward on his Lee Oswald plans. And so we're getting pieces here and there of him being distracted, being forgetful, careless with his slang, him trying not to lie to Sadie, lying to her about some things and then saying, like, I can't tell you everything, but it's nothing that it's nothing that would upset you. I'm not doing anything bad. It's just the tension is really starting to slowly build here. I think it's cool.
It kind of shows.
Well, she flat out says, I won't allow another man to put a broom in the bed. Like that's the bottom line of it.
She's starting to withdraw.
And what I love is that she knows until she's divorced, she's only entitled to so much of him, and so much of that
She accepts what he tells her without pushing, but she's like, once my divorce is over, I have the right to know things. I don't feel like I do now, but I will.
Right. I'm standing my ground here so that you know when the time comes where that line's gonna be, and that line is no secrets, full disclosure.
Which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
They make a great couple.
It
like
also
Sadie a lot.
shows it shows Jake's in a tough position, but it shows that he is at heart a really decent person, because while he is lying, there are several points where he refuses to lie in a real lying way. Like when he comes back home from Dallas, she asks him, "Where were you?" And he thinks, I could have told her I was Christmas shopping. It would be so easy to have a really good lie that I could, but he doesn't do that because he knows that he knows that these lies aren't okay.
He should have picked up some Christmas gifts, and he could have lied, but not lied.
But also, like I said, it shows that like the fact that he didn't do that when he knew he could have shows that he knows what he's doing is shitty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the time we reach the Christmas bash, Sadie has started to withdraw from Jake. And Bobby Jill, by this point, has also attempted suicide. We get some stuff with her just always hiding her face because she's so scarred and trying to cover it with a lot of makeup. And Mike's trying to tell her, like, you don't have to put on a lot of makeup. And I'm not with you because I pity. It's just, just more insight into the town and the people who live here. And it's really sweet, but really sad. And Jake is starting to have to really put things into place for his plan, setting up the spy equipment in the shack that Lee's eventually going to be living in. And Jake's decision to continue with his plan is really starting to unravel his life in Jody. He's going to do at least one more. I don't remember like every plot detail of this book, but he's going to do one more awesome thing before this all goes to shit. Deke pulls some very obvious reverse psychology on Jake.
They want Jake to stay forever, essentially.
And he does too.
He signed a 1 year, and now he's like, yeah, you know what? You don't have to sign the 1 year, I guess. But the drama club will actually be closing in that case. Like it gives him all the things like, actually, like this guy will be in charge of it. Guy fucking terrible at it.
But I'm sure it'll be fine.
I'm sure he'll figure it out. There's so many people in this town who would love to be making our children's lives better. We don't need you. Like it's so over the top. And I love that it seems like both him and Jake are on the same page of how over the top it is. Like Jake appreciates how over the top it is.
So Jake agrees to take this on, and he agrees to have another show. And he has one condition, though, which we don't know at this point what his ultimate plan is. We find out when everybody else finds out, which I think is really cool. Did you guys anticipate they're going to raise funds for something for this show? Did you have any idea where he was going with this?
I completely forgot. I was so happy when the moment happened, and I remembered because it's a really great moment. And they're going to give that money to the girl whose face is scarred.
Yeah,
I was mostly just really happy when he didn't suggest that they do a literal minstrel show.
Oh my god, the minstrel show thing. The note I made was the minstrel show impression. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not great. But instead they just do vaudeville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a hit. And while Sadie and Jake are working on the show together, it kind of brings them back together with one another a little bit. The show is a huge success. It's really sweet. And at the end, Jake and Sadie announce where the proceeds are going, and Bobby Jill is in the audience. Her and her parents didn't know either. And she's got her face buried in her hands, just like sobbing, with happiness.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And I think after this is where I will be sad forever reading this book, because Jake is so preoccupied with his upcoming Lee plans that he just keeps slipping up more and more until Sadie finally breaks. And she is like, dude, you can take your broom, shove it up your ass. If you're not going to come clean with me, let's unpack this breakup, you guys.
If I'm going to ruin my entire life, over singing a fucking song. And you tell me that song ends up being because I decided to sing Honky Tonk Woman. I deserve my life to be ruined.
What?
I hate that. Like, so that's the song. He was singing Honky Tonk Woman, and that's when she blows up at him and is like, all right, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. You're singing this really disgusting song. Where did you hear it? Like, where are the places that you've been going? Because this isn't something that would be on the radio.
All the other words he says.
Yeah, and excellent, dude. Mm-hmm. I was just hung up on the fact that you guys know my feelings about music.
You hate it.
I made the effort to listen to Honky Tonk Woman, and it fucking sucks. It's a shitty song.
You're not a Rolling Stones fan there, Josh?
I'm sure if you told me a good Rolling Stones song, I would have heard it and would have been like, yeah, that's a song that I like.
Just not that one.
but Honky Tonk Woman, I struggled to finish that song. It's fucking terrible.
You really did do your homework.
I did.
If Stephen King ever hears this, he's going to be pissed. Honky Tonk Woman is such a Stephen King core song. Like,
It's the note that I made after this was, Jesus, Sadie, if he wanted you to know, you'd know. It's the era of saying it's man business.
Man. Oh.
And moving on.
Slapping her on the butt and saying, bitches leave.
Exactly.
Yeah, this just sucks because we love these characters and we love them together. And she, from her perspective, she's right. And she needs to move on and leave him because he's not being forthcoming with her. They have a pretty nasty breakup because you can see the love they have for each other and you can see how hard it is for her, but how like strong she is in saying, I let my husband do this for 4 years. I am never going to do this again. And we end this fight with Jake having another strange moment on her. He realizes that Sadie looks an awful lot like Doris Dunning, and he sees a piece of mail in her house that kind of sets him off and makes him realize like, oh, hey, the past is harmonizing and she looks like Doris. And she's got this middle name of Doris that I didn't know until I just saw her mail. Is she really safe from John Clayton? And he scares her about him. What did you guys think of this final scene in this section?
It's, once again, from her perspective, bad.
Yeah.
Because it is not the way you would want, like, it's such a bizarre non sequitur.
Well, yeah, they're breaking up, and then all of a sudden he's like, does your husband know where you live?
Yeah.
And he's really intense about it. And she insists that she's safe, and he's like, well, your parents like him. Like, don't trust that he can't find you.
Sadie reacts unreasonably to the idea that people can react unreasonably in a stressful situation.
Go on.
Like, 'cause it's like if this guy puts the pressure on, someone will cave. Mm-hmm. She can't just say, oh, no one would ever tell him where I am. Like, that's kind of what he's trying to say is like, yeah, normally, sure. But if he really wants to know and he keeps the pressure on, if your parents love him and he can play them, he'll wear him down. Like, that's the kind of what he's trying to get across.
Mm-hmm. I think that speaks to the naivety of women in that era too, though, because we get a little bit of her naivety when she's talking about, her mom said, don't let him put a baby in you for, this amount of time right after you get married, and women don't have orgasms, and like giving her all of this really outdated, sad, strange advice.
Really sad.
And she just and she's like, I'm so stupid. And he's like thinking, you're not stupid. You're like a lot of women from this time who just didn't know. And so she can't imagine a world in which, she couldn't just quietly get a divorce. Mm-hmm. And it's that foreshadowing is absolutely terrifying because he's so intense about it too, that she's like backed into a wall and sort of flinches away from him. Mm-hmm. And that's when he's like, oh, okay, I'm being intense. Please just promise me that you will be safe and give the school a picture of him so they know what he looks like.
God, so smart.
It is so smart. It's 2011 smart though, not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she screams at him that she will and to get out. Basically, it feels like she's saying whatever he wants her to say to end this, to just have him leave. And that is where we leave the episode.
That is it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode where we will be reading through chapter 26. For Benjamin Graham and C.M. Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn reminding you, time travelers lie a lot.
Hey everyone, C.M. Alexander here. Thank you for listening to 11/22/63, Part 3. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio and X at Derry Public. You can also email us at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out our Patreon for bonus episodes and early releases, and our Etsy store for merchandise. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.